Alright, hello everybody. I thought I would do a quick little video on how to make a boater style fascinator with items that you would have around your house or you can get from your local craft store. This would be an intro class for someone that's never blocked before, that doesn't have hat blocks, so I wanted to make this as accessible as possible. But we are going to be making this boater style fascinator, again with items that you can get on Amazon or your local craft store. So those items would be, I have this wooden box that I got from Michael's or Hobby Lobby or wherever, and I took the little hinge off. You can, gives you a couple different shapes. You can use a saucer, a dish, bowl, whatever you have available. You're going to need some plastic wrap, your cinema in your color of choice. You're going to want a matching color thread. I will be using a contrasting thread so that you can see what I'm doing. You will need your needles, some straight pins, thimbles, and you can you'll also need a measuring tape or ruler, scissors, obviously. You will need tailor's chalk or one of the fabric markers or a pencil, something. Ultimately, like the chalk is really the best so that you can erase the line. I also like to have some beeswax. I like to wax my thread. The cinema is a little hard on thread. It will cause it to fray, so I do like to wax mine. I like these little quilting clips. You can use clothespins if you want. You just need something that's going to kind of grip your millinery wire. And you will need some of your millinery wire. This is 18 gauge millinery wire. 20 would be fine. And then your hat elastics. You will need to attach the fascinator to your head. You will also need we're just going to wrap that up. And that's just going to keep all of the sizing and everything from getting on our block. So I will be using this black cinema from Judith M. Whatever, it's pre-sized or pre-stiffened, so I'm not going to be doing that step. It's just the standard machine grade cinema. One of the things that you want to do when you're looking at your materials, it is a natural product from the abaca plant. I don't know if you all can see, but it has all these little knots and things, and sometimes it'll have a darker, thicker weave, or it'll be a little warped here. But you just kind of want to inspect it because you do want the nicest side to be showing. And to have as few lumps and bumps and wiggles and things in them. When I'm blocking a hat, I like to use 3 layers of cinema, particularly with the boaters. They are a very structured type of hat or fascinator. So I do like to have the 3 layers just to add some structural integrity. If you're using a higher grade cinema, or you probably may not need 3 layers. I do like to have it be kind of opaque and really have a super saturated color too. But basically what we're going to do is we're just going to, depending on what you're using, if you're using a saucer or a plate, whatever you're using, but you just want to make sure that you have enough that it's going to go around your block and under. So, it can just be, an inch or 2 excess, but you just want to have enough that you've got enough to pull and stretch. So I'm going to cut my piece here. that's going to be appropriate to the size of my block. I'm just going to follow the lines of the cinnamon down where I need it to be. And we'll cut our selvage off here. We don't need this. So it will, it's where the cinnamon is just, the roll is finished when they weave it. And it kind of binds the material together. You just won't get a clean stretch on it. So I'm going to cut that off. And I have my first piece of cinnamon. I'm going to repeat this 2 more times, and then we will get to blocking. You will also need a spray bottle of water. Alright, so as you can see, I have my 3 layers of cinnamon ready to go. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my warp and my weft are all kind of going the same way. I'm going to get everything kind of straightened up here. Okay, I've also checked my cinnamon for any tears or lumps or bumps on all 3 layers. So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to get our cinnamon damp with our spray bottle. If you don't have a spray bottle of water, you can actually get a little pot or a bowl and soak your cinnamon in it. You just want to kind of give it a shake. We do need the fibers to soften to be able to mold it over the block. The steam will help with that. But the water just gets into the fiber and really softens up the fiber, the weave here, and it will also activate the sizing or stiffener that is on here. So I'm going to take these over to my utility sink and give them a good spray and let them kind of sit for a moment to get them damp and let the water absorb into the fiber and activate that stiffener, and then we will throw it on the block. All right, so my cinnamon is nice and damp. All right, so I'm going to center it on my block here. And what we're going to do when we're blocking a piece, you always want to work in your north, south, east, and then west. And the reason we do this is it keeps the weave and the fabric centered on the block. That way you're not accidentally working it too far to one side and then you don't have enough on the opposite side to stretch and pull over the block. It also keeps the distortion down in the cinnamon, in this case. So I'm going to make sure that's not centered very well. There we go. All right, all 3 layers are going over, and I'm going to take either one of my little quilting pins. See if that'll get over the rim, and it will not. So I will take my clothespin here and just get my north. I'm going to come to the opposite side and just get my south done. Come over here, my east. I don't know if you can see that. This camera is new to me, guys, so bear with me on that. And we are going to get our west done here. Okay. I'm going to get my steamer on because we're going to want a little steam to help keep these corners, which is where your bias is. The steam will help soften the fabric some more so we can stretch it and get a nice clean line. Steamer turned on here and get that going. But on our bias here on our corner, I don't know if you all can see this, but when I pull it, it's going to stretch around that edge. And I'm going to put my clip on, and again, working with the same concept of north, south, east, and west, I'm going to go to the opposite side here. and grab all 3 layers, right? And then I'm just going to stretch and pull, making sure to get as many of the lumps and bumps out as possible. And we will make a couple of different passes with this, so if you're not getting it this first go around, that's totally normal. We'll take a couple of passes. So then we'll get over here to this corner, and again, just making sure I'm grabbing all 3 layers, and we're going to stretch and pull. And go to my last corner here. Really make sure I don't want any wrinkles, or as few. You're going to get wrinkles sometimes, guys, but you really just want to try to work all of it out so that it's nice and smooth. And it's hard sometimes when you've got all 3 layers, but I have a little bunch right in here that's bunched up I want to get. Alright, there we go. Alright, now as my steamer is getting warm, we're going to go back and we're going to tighten all of these up a little bit. So you want to pick a spot and just really start pulling. And again, the steamer will help you. Let me check on mine here. Alright guys, so my steamer is going. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I'm going to come kind of over here where it's a little lumpy and bumpy, and I'm just going to put it in the steam here and get it nice and soft so that I can pull that a little tighter and work out some of the bumps and lumps and things in here. And again, I'm grabbing all 3 pieces of cinnamon and I'm just smoothing it over. And if I need to take one off and adjust, I will. Alright, this is looking pretty good, so I'm just going to go around and just tighten up my edges here with my steam. And I will speed up this video a bit because it's going to just be doing the same thing all the way around. Right. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that is what the bias is going to look like when you are pulling and stretching. It's just going to continue to stretch and pull that way. Right. Some more steam. I'm just putting some pressure on that, just stretching and pulling and smoothing as I go. Oops. This should be my last one. I am pretty satisfied with all that. I like to kind of run my hand over it, guys, and feel for any wrinkles or lumps or bumps and smooth them out. So what we're going to do now is we are going to set this aside and let it dry, and then we will use our iron to give it a good blast of steam and then the hot iron to just make sure everything is all tightened up the way that we want it. And the next thing we will do is we will work on our brim. And I'm going to show you, we're going to do our brim since it's a straight flat brim. I'm going to show you a way to do this without using a block. We're just going to use an ironing board or a tabletop. All right, so we are going to work on our brim using 3 layers of cinema, which I have already cut. I don't have a specific size, guys. I like to just put my block, so this is the other half of my hat base, the crown that we're making. I'm going to show you a way to do this without using a block at all. You can definitely use a plate or a platter if you have one, but I just kind of want to see portion-wise, kind of wanted it to be in the middle. But since we're making a fascinator, I don't need it to be super huge, and I have enough just on flat space to do my brim, and it looks proportionate to my block. I just kind of eyeball it for this. So what essentially we're going to do is we are just going to get our cinema damp again with our spray bottle, and we're going to take our steam iron and we are just going to iron and kind of fuse the pieces together. And I'm going to set something like a plate or a bowl or, you know, whatever kind of heavy on top just to kind of help it stick together. You can certainly just pin it down to an ironing board. If you have that, is an option as well. And we're just going to, in fact, I'll probably just iron these as is and just pin them together and make sure that they're nice and fused, and it's going to be a really super easy way to make a straight brim. All right, everybody, I've got my dampened cinema here, and just to activate the stiffener, and I'm going to give it, turn off my steam here, and I'm going to just use my iron here to press the layers together. If you don't have one of these Teflon covers, I highly recommend getting one. They're really cheap on Amazon. If you don't have that, parchment paper will work as well to keep the fabric from stiffening, or the stiffener from sticking to your iron. Don't use wax paper. It has a wax coating. But the parchment paper will do in a pinch. You don't really want to use a towel. The fuzz from the towel, the fibers will stick to your, right, and then you will be brushing those off. But I can feel it fusing together. I'm going to keep, if I need to give it a blast of steam, that's fine, but I am using the dry iron to fuse all of the ends and pieces together. And once it has time to set up, then we will mark our circle for our brim, cut it out. Our crown will have dried. We'll pull that off the block, and I will show you how to finish those and put those pieces together. Okay, everyone, our cinema is dry, our crown and our brim. This, I feel, as I'm feeling it, I feel a couple of spots where it doesn't feel like the cinema is quite fused together, so I'm going to give it a shot of steam from my steam iron. And just give it a blast here, soften that up, and then let the dry iron hit it, and really, yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay. So now that I am satisfied with that, and our brim feels pretty good too, what we're going to do is we are going to pull our crown off of our block. Get this out of the way so you can see. Okay. Alright, so now what we're going to do is just take all of our pins off our block here. And as I'm pulling these up, I can feel a couple of other spots that also feel like they need a touch of the steam iron. So I will do that here in just a minute. I'm going to finish pulling all of these off. So now what I'll do is I'll take my steam iron and give it a blast, and I will go through and I will, so I did this part, I'm going to give this and all the way around. Just don't burn your hand. But I'm going to steam and press and just work out any last minute lumps and bumps, making sure everything is nice and smooth. And this just gives everything a really nice, clean finish. Yeah, all right, that feels great. Turn my iron off. All right, so now we are going to remove our block from our cinnamon, or our cinnamon from our block as it is. And I'm just going to get in here and slowly loosen that up. All right, I'm going to get in here and slowly start kind of loosening this a little bit. I don't really want to distort my shape if I can help it. Sometimes, let's see, we might need to cut some of this excess off before we get in there and pull this off. Just slowly going to go through and kind of just loosen it a little bit on the underside where it's been tucked in and around. Once I get it kind of loosened, if you need a little extra help, if you've got a corset stay or a collar stay, you can just use a dull butter knife, but sometimes you can kind of get in there and work the cinnamon loose, or you can grab your plastic, sometimes pulling that along with the cinnamon helps pop it out. And we'll just get it going here, and slowly work it off the block. Ta-da! All right, so now what we are going to do is, I don't know if you can see the line where the where we folded it under on the block or on our bowl or dish. I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to follow that line around, and that's where I'm going to trim. I'm going to trim off all that excess, and that will be our crown. And that is our crown. And I'm just going to double check and make sure that, you know, my measurements are pretty consistent all the way around. This is where I cut into it initially. It's a little bit of a bit sticking out there that I'll just trim up. And yeah, see a little bit more there. And, all right, so that looks pretty good. All right, so now we're going to move on to our brim, and I am just going to use this Lazy Susan that I have, and I'm going to use this as my circle shape. I'm just going to sort of center it on my material here and make sure it is kind of where I like it. And then I'm going to take my tailor's chalk and I'm just going to mark my outline here. And then that is what I'm going to cut away and be to be my brim. And you can use a plate, a platter, if you have a compass and you want to use that. But that will be my brim. All right, and then we will just cut that out. Before we do that, though, we are going to mark where we want our crown to be. So you'll need your measuring tape or your ruler. And since this is going to be dead center, I just want to confirm that I am exactly where I want it to be. And so far, so good. I can come that way just a hair. All right, reconfirm. All right, looks pretty good. And I will take my tailor's chalk again, and I will mark where our crown is going to go. All right, and so now I'm going to cut out my brim. All right. All right, the next thing we need to do is figure out where our center back is going to be. And what I'm looking for is the nicest part of my shape is what I want to be in the front. This is looking pretty good. I don't see any piece that's any like wiggly or bumpy. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and settle on this as my center back. I'm also going to do the same thing for my crown. Now, one of the things I do like to do with my cinema and my straw when I'm working in two pieces is I want the lines, my warp and my weft in my cinema, I want it to be lined up. And I want them to be on the same line. I don't want to have it like slightly off. I just think it looks more polished. And since this is such a shallow crown, I don't think it matters. But I'm going to go ahead and mark my center back on both of these with a needle and thread. All right, I'm just going to make a little knot just to mark it. On my brim here. And I will do the same thing on my crown here. So this will be the center back of my hat, or fascinator as it is. And this just makes me know that it helps me know that my backs are where they're supposed to be and consistent. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out our wire to go on our brim. I'm going to use some black millinery wire since my base is black. The nice thing about millinery wire is it's, cotton or rayon covered, and so if you're working with like a red, or a different color, and you're using your white wire, you can take some Sharpies or some spray paint or whatever and color it to match your brim, and that way you won't be able to see any of it. And you always want to give yourself a little bit of excess, guys. You'll need some wire cutters, and just give it a little snip, and there we go. All right, so you do want to have your little bit of excess. Now you'll see that my wire here is not quite the same size as or it's not the same shape. It's got a tighter coil from being on the spool. So I'm going to open up my wire a little bit. And what I want to do to make this circle a little bigger is I'm going to take the wire between my fingers and my thumb, like right here. I don't know if you can see like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some steady, gentle pressure starting kind of in the middle of my wire, and I'm going to work one way and just pull and keep the pressure nice and steady. And I'm just going to open up that wire a little bit. I'm going to go back to the middle, and I'm going to do the other side. Okay. And I might have to repeat that a few times to get the wire sort of to match the shape of my brim. The inverse is true. If you're trying to tighten your coil, you would work it on the inside do the same technique on the inside, and that will make your spiral or your shape, the curve, tighter. Yeah. It's a little too much right there. The one thing you also want to do is keep it on, making sure that it's flat, and your table is good for this, because you don't want to inadvertently like roll it and get it up so that it's, you know, twist it so that then it sticks up in wrong spots. You want to keep it flat because our brim is perfectly flat on this piece. All right, and so I'm going to just double check here where I am with things, making sure that this is going to basically go right around the edge of my fascinator without distorting the shape. We will then stitch this, clip this down with our quilting clips, and then we will stitch. Now the one thing I do want to do is when my wire joins together, you want it to be right where your center back is on your piece. And some people like to, and then I'm going to cut off my excess wire. I've got a little excess over here that I don't need. Clip that off. Some people like to take a double thread and go ahead and bind this. I actually just like to do it as I stitch my wire to my brim. You could use a ferrule to join your wire together. I typically do not on my hats and fascinators. I do it on my wire work when I want the piece to have a very clean, seamless line. But basically we are going to take our clips here and we are going to clip our wire to the, I'm going to get my smaller clips. Let's see. Some people also like to use floral tape to join their pieces together. There's no right or wrong way. You do whatever works best for you. But I like to leave this, I like the thread or just to stitch it as I go, because if I have to kind of slightly adjust it, I have the flexibility to do that. But that's just my personal preference. You were taught a different way, by all means do what you were taught. I'm going to come do my north, south, east, and west again to start. Oh, pulling clips around. All right. And then we will be using either a blanket stitch or a glove stitch to stitch our wire to the brim. You can use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine if you want. I'm going to do it by hand because not everybody has a machine. So I will show you how to do it by hand. That way, sometimes on the smaller pieces, I just find it's easier than trying to rethread my machine and wind my bobbin. It's just sometimes quicker, I think, to do it by hand. And so it's, all right, so that's looking pretty good. Let me get that. On my edge here. All right. All right. So get my thread. All right, so I have my double thread that's been waxed. I would not worry about how much thread you're going to need to try to do this in one pass. The cinema is going to tear up your thread, and you do want to be able to stop and tie it off before it snaps. Otherwise, you'll have to work some of your stitches back to get enough thread to to finish that line before you start a new one. And so basically I'm just going to do a little stab stitch here close to my wire. Now that will be covered by our bias strip here when we are ready to finish. I'm going to start like that, and I'm just going to do a little blanket stitch. I don't know, like every centimeter. I'm going to do a stitch between all 3 layers, and we'll just pull it through. And then what you do for the blanket stitch is we're just going to pop our needle underneath the stitch we just made and pull it through. So grab that, pull it through. And that is basically going to put our wire all the way around our brim. So I'm going to finish this off, and then I will pick up the video back here at this end, and I'll show you how I just make sure that this is all nice and tight. I want to make sure that I'm watching my tension on the wire and on my cinemae. I don't want to inadvertently pull too tight and then cause a warp in my shape. So just mind that as you go around, and then we'll pick this back up here when we're ready to finish. Okay, everybody, I am pretty much done stitching my blanket stitch all the way around. It's getting my wire on my brim. You can see it's lying perfectly flat on the table, so there's no distortion. What I'm going to do now is I'm getting to the part where my wire join is, and basically I'm going to do my blanket stitch all the way around. I'm just going to do it at a much closer and tighter interval all the way around so that this joint is secured really tightly to the brim here. And I just want to get my thread going. But if you, like I said, if you wanted to use floral tape or just wrap it beforehand with your wire, that's fine. There's no right or wrong way. You do what you like best. I just wanted to show you what I'm going to do on this. And again, I'm just getting my needle all the way through and grabbing my stitch so that it is, and I'm pulling it so it's nice and tight. And this. And if I need to go back over this little section one more time with my stitches, I will do that, just to make sure that my wire is nice and secure there where it is joined. And you can see it matches my center back. I'm right at my center back, so all of my overlaps and joins will all be at the back of the piece. Depending on how you choose to finish that off, your join for your finish work around the crown will be at a different spot. But for the wire and the bias cinemae finishing edge that I'm going to do on this, I want my join to be consistent at the back of the hat. So that is there. Finish this off here. And you can see I'm pulling it tight, but I'm not pulling it tight enough where I am actually ripping through my cinemae. So just watch your tension with that. And that is all nice and secure. Let me get in here and tie this off really quick. once, twice, and pull. All right. So that is our wired brim. And what I'm going to do off camera is I'm actually just going to take a Sharpie and go over my stitches so that it's black like my cinema, and then we will pick up with adding our crown to our brim. Okay guys, we are going to now cut out the center of our brim here. You can see it's all wired, but we're going to cut out our brim and get it attached to our crown in this next step. So I need my tailor's chalk. Now this, what we marked earlier, is the center of our base. Using our block is our template. And in order to have space to have a place to stitch our crown to our brim, we need to mark a second circle here on the inside. And I'm just going to use my chalk. For those of you that care, I'm probably going to do like a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch on the inside of my original circle here. And I'm just going to go around. It doesn't have to be perfect. Basically, it's going to end up being like our darts, where we're going to attach our crown to our brim. So I need to cut out this center ring here, not the outer ring, but just the center ring, okay? And I'm gonna get a little sharp pair of scissors, and I can get down in there. Big ones might be a little too big for this. In the middle here, just kind of get a spot in my cinema for my scissors to go. And then I'm going to cut that circle all the way out. So now we need to make our darts in this little section here, so that we can bend the pieces up to have a place to set our crown on, and then stitch our crown to our brim. You want to cut up to your line, not through it. You want to stop a little bit beforehand. Otherwise, you will see your cuts on the finished part of your brim. And I know you're going to have some trim that's going to go around that, but we really want to try to minimize any of those things to be seen. So you don't want to cut through your line, just right up to it. And just go nice and slow. I'm going to move over, 3/4 of an inch. And I'm just doing straight cuts up to my line. And I'm going to do that all the way around here. So this is exactly how you will make a cinema hat, guys, with your crown and your brim. Go nice and slow. You don't want to go too quick and then end up cutting into your finished section of your brim. do one more right there. All right, so I'm going to turn my steamer on, and I'm going to take my crown, and I'm going to give this a little bit of steam here, and then I'm going to push it over my crown so that these will bend up and will give me a nice side to slide my crown on, and then we will attach those together. Okay, so we are going to pop our block out. Set that aside. Now we are going to take our crown and attach it to our brim. We want to make sure that our center backs are all lined up. And we are just going to slip this over our little pieces here. Right, and you can see now that our crown is, whoops, missed one here, on our brim. And it is down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin the crown to the brim with my straight pins. And then we will stitch that on, add our hat elastics, and then our ribbon on the inside. I'm just going to stick my pin in and grab my little darts there. Again, my north, south, east, and west. Alright, so I'm going to get my needle threaded, and again I'm going to use a double thread, and then we will stitch our crown to our brim. We will add our hat elastics and our Peterson ribbon, and then we will work on trimming out our hat. Don't know what happened, I cut out there, so basically I'm just going to do my stitching, my little running stitch all the way around. Making sure to grab my piece in here where my brim section here, and give it a little pull. Again, I want it to keep it taut but not tight enough where I start putting indentations and things into my cinemae. The struggle is real. Alright, and I will pick this up when I get to the end. We'll tie it off, and then we will work on our bias trim to go around the outside of our brim, and work on also adding our hat elastics and our ribbon. Alright, so you can see I have finished my stitches all the way around, and I am just going to tie off my thread, and then we will work on adding our hat elastics. So keeping in mind that this is my center back, let me get these pins out of here. I need to think about how I want this to sit on my head. So this is a good time to go to your mirror and try it on. Kind of think about where you want your finish work and your trim work to be. And then we will make the decision on where to put our hat elastics in. All right, so I figured out where I want my hat elastics. I don't know if you can see it, but I've marked it with my tailor's chalk. So we will get these out, I will get my needle threaded, and then we will stitch these into our hat and then add our Peterson. All right, so I have my hat elastics. You can use one elastic, obviously. Sometimes I like to use two for added stability. I'm always surprised at how that second elastic can really make the hat feel really secure on the head, particularly if you are having a larger trim or it's a larger fascinator. I like the second elastic. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but I'm just going to get these and them in my hat here, and sew these. Down onto our brim. Tie that off. Nice. Now with my thread. Of course, I get a knot on that end, but that's okay. I don't know if you can see that. We'll just tie that off nice and tight. And we will do that on the other side here as well. Now, before I stitch this other end to the fascinator, I'm going to twist my hat elastics around each other. Just like so. And let's see where my chalk line is here. There. All right. That. And where's my chalk line? I can't see. There it is. All right. One more time for good measure. Not in my thread. I tell you, finding good quality thread is not easy. I had a bunch of vintage threads from my grandmother that were just exceptional quality. They don't really make them nearly as well anymore. But and we will tie that off. probably not, but it'll be covered. All right. Try this on and make sure that I'm happy with the fit and where everything is sitting. All right. All right, so I figured out where I want my hat elastics. I don't know if you can see it, but I've marked it with my tailor's chalk. So we will get these out, I will get my needle threaded, and then we will stitch these into our hat and then add our Peterson. All right, so I have my hat elastics. You can use one elastic, obviously. Sometimes I like to use two for added stability. I'm always surprised at how that second elastic can really make the hat feel really secure on the head, particularly if you are having a larger trim or it's a larger fascinator. I like the second elastic. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but I'm just going to get these and them in my hat here, and sew these. Down onto our brim. Tie that off. And with my thread. Of course, I get a knot on that end, but that's okay. I don't know if you can see that. But we'll just tie that off nice and tight. And we will do that on the other side here as well. Now, before I stitch this other end to the fascinator, I'm going to twist my hat elastics around each other. Just like so. And see where my chalk line is here. There. All right. That. And where's my chalk line? I can't see. There it is. All right. And one more time for good measure. Not in my thread. I tell you, finding good quality thread is not easy. I had a bunch of vintage threads from my grandmother that they were just exceptional quality. They don't really make them nearly as well anymore. But and we will tie that off. Bit of an ugly knot, but it'll be covered. All right. Try this on and make sure that I'm happy with the fit and where everything is sitting. All right. Okay, so I've measured my 19 inches. I've got it cut and I've got my two ends together. I'm going to mark it at a ½ inch on this side, so that leaves me a ½ inch on the side, and that will make the actual circumference of our ribbon will then be 18 inches and will fit into our hat nicely. So I'm just going to hand stitch this right here. You can put it on a machine if you want, but I'm going to go do that really quick, and then we will fit it into our crown and we will stitch the Petersham to the crown. So I'm just going to do a little back stitch with my double thread here. I'm going to catch the end. All right. And I'm just going to follow the grain in the ribbon here. My stitches are not very good today. So we have our ribbon, and I'm going to take this and just iron this down so that it's nice and flat, and then we will get this into our hat here. All right, so we have our Petersham in our hat. I have pulled my hat elastics through. We don't want to inadvertently stitch them in the wrong place. You can pin these down if they're going to be in your way. But we're going to take our straight pins. And I've got my center back of my ribbon lined up with the center back of my hat. And I'm going to bring the edge of that Petersham right to my brim break there. And I'm just going to pin that into place. And then I will do a running stitch all the way around to stitch my Petersham into my crown. All right, everybody, so I have my ribbon pinned in, and I'm going to start stitching at the back of my center back here, and I'm just going to do a stab stitch, running stitch all the way around. And what I'm going to try to do, guys, my stitches are only going to be, I don't know, about 1/8 of an inch, and they're going to work into the little loops of the bottom here of my Petersham. So I'll get this going, and I'll try to get a good shot of that so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm just going to I'm just going to, you know, do a couple of loops at a time and go in and just work it through. I usually do this in my lap. It's a little easier to do. I'm trying to do it on camera. It's not. And it will catch on your needles. You're going to have to manage your thread. I said it's a little easier to do when you're working with it in your lap, but nobody wants to see that on camera. So that's my first stitch, and I'm going to just come over on the other side here. Whoop. And come in, and like I said, go over like 1, 2 little rows there, loops at the end of my cinemae, and grab it and so see if you all can see that. Right in here, we're just going to take these little tiny stitches all the way around. I'm going to take this off camera and do it. I can manage it a little bit better in my lap versus trying to lean across the table to do that. But I will meet up with you guys when we're done here, and we will move on to the next step. All right, so we have our Petersham stitched into our brim. And so we're going to set this aside for now, and we're going to work on our bias binding to go around the outside of our brim. What you need to do is figure out what material you're going to use, whether it's Petersham ribbon, braid. I'm going to use just a cinemae bias binding, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So I need to figure out how wide I want this to be. You can have it, you know, really large. You could have it really tiny, you know, just depending on what kind of look you're going for. I'm probably going to do mine about 1/2 inch. So I think that's as wide as I want to make the width, and I will need that on the top and the bottom. So basically I'm going to take my 1/2 inch, and I'm going to end up cutting my bias binding with a width of 2 inches. So as I fold it over, it will be nice and even on all sides. But the first thing I need to do is actually measure the circumference of my brim here. I'm just going to use my tape measure, and I want to get my measurement here, and I want to add 2 inches to whatever this is so that I have my overlap that I will join my center back on. So it doesn't have to be exact, but I just want to, you know, make sure that I'd rather have too much than too little. So I am now at roughly 45.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut my, I want my bias, the length of my bias strip of cinemae to be 47 inches. So I'm going to go get out my cinemae, and we will get that cut. Okay, so I need to cut my bias strip. I need it to be 47 inches long. That is, my brim is actually 45 inches around, but I need an additional 2 inches overlap. I also need my strip to be 2 inches wide. Now we are going to cut it on the bias, which is on the 45. So, you know, your warp and your weft run at 90-degree angles. And so we want to intersect that at the 45 so that we can stretch it and curve it around our brim. Also, when you're measuring how thick you want your bias to be, we're not measuring it parallel to the lines on the Cinemate. We are going to do it at the 45. So my 2 inches is actually going to go this way. So I'm going to get my chalk, and let's see, I'm going to make sure that this is going to be 47 inches. Ooh, just barely. I'm going to get some pins. I can't see my tailor's chalk, so I'm just going to mark it with some straight pins here. So I know where to cut. And then I want my strip to be 2 inches wide. So I'm going to measure at 2-inch increments and mark it all the way down so I know where to cut. And then if, you know, it depends on how big you want your bias strip, but I'm just quadrupling the measurement of the width. So I want my bias strip to be a 1/2 inch wide, so I'm quadrupling that measurement. So when I fold it over, I will have the end of the, or the final width being 1/4 inch. So all right, I'm going to keep doing this all the way down, and then I'm going to cut along my line here right on the inside of my pins, and then we will pick this video back up and I will show you how to fold this and shape it so it can go around your brim. Alright, so I have my 2-inch wide bias strip, and I need to mark the halfway point between or halfway point on the strip. So all I'm going to do, just to give myself a little bit of a line, is just fold it in half and kind of gently push down, and you can see it leaves a crease. So that's how I know where my halfway point is on my bias strip. And I'm just going to do that for the whole strip, being careful not to pull it and stretch it. I don't want to curve it just yet. We're not ready to do that part. But I'm just doing this so that I have a guideline for when I do my next fold. Alright, so now I have my guideline, and what I need to do now is straighten it back out. And what I want to do is I want to take this part the one side of it, and I want to fold it over until it hits that guideline. And then I'm just going to press down and crease that. And then we are going to repeat the steps on the other side. And then we will be ready to steam and stretch our bias strip to curve around our brim. So, knock my pins over from that way. Let me... I'm just going slightly over my halfway point. All right, now for this next step, we are going to fold this back over. Okay, and we are just going to continue to fold that down. If you're struggling with your cinema, you can get your fingers damp, just really, really lightly damp if it's just really, if you're having a difficult time manipulating the fibers as you go. And it will just get it soft enough without really activating the stiffener. Okay. You can see we're almost at the end. All right, not quite. There we go. All right. I'll turn on my steam iron and get it going for this next part. So I want to fold it in half one more time again. This is where it's going to get kind of stiff. It's going to be a little difficult to manipulate. You've got a lot of layers going on here. So it'll be a little bit easier if your piece is a little wider to do this. I just want a really narrow piece of trim on my Fascinator. Cinema is always hard on your fingers. It dries out your skin. I could never be a nail girl. As much as I like them, they're not practical for what I do. I'm pause there. Once we finish this, we are going to steam this and put our curve in it so it will go and sit nicely around the curve of our brim, and then we will stitch it on. We will need the steam for that. So all right, so this next part, we're going to take our steam iron and we are going to use it to stretch and pull this, or not really stretch and pull, but we're just going to use it to slightly curve this bias as we go around. This is the opening is where your brim, this is going to slide around your brim. So when you're pulling, you want it to be on your curve to be on the outside edge here. So just watch that when you're working it. You don't want to accidentally stretch the wrong side. So I am just going to give it a little blast of steam and soften it and just sort of curl it. And you can see it's getting a nice curve in there. And it doesn't have to be perfect when we clip it to the brim. We can work out any little kinks with some steam. I'm just kind of giving it just a little stretch. I don't want to pull it too tight, but just enough to curve that outside edge. All right, here, just about finished. All right. All right, so we're going to want to get our quilting clips or our clothespins out again, because we will need this for the next part. I'm going to clean up this little bit of an edge here. All right, so you want to find your center back, which should still be marked with your thread or your pen. And we're going to just slide our brim in the fold that we made and clip it on. And we are just going to do that the entire way around. And we'll trim down our excess at the back when we get there. And then we will stitch this on. And I'm really making sure to work my wire all the way down to the edge of this fold. Sometimes those little bits of barbs of cinnamon want to stick up and grab pieces, and they don't want to go all the way down. So I'm just working it all in there. I'm getting there. All right. And you can see when we kind of curled and stretched, it stretched that cinnamon quite a bit. So we're just going to cut off the excess. I'm going to probably cut it here. I just want a little tiny overlap here at the back. Alright, next we will get our needle and thread. I like to use the double thread, and we're going to use a stab stitch and go around and stitch our bias binding to our brim. Alright, so I am just going to go ahead and get my first stitch in here so I can grab the knot in my thread here. And we're going to be doing a stab stitch all the way around. And so, let's see if I can adjust this so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. Those of you that don't know what a stab stitch is, basically we are going to stab at an angle the stitch, and we're going to grab all through all of our layers of cinnamon there and just pull it through. And then we're just going to go over a tiny little bit, and then we're going to take it at the angle and push it back through, grabbing the underside there and pulling that through. And you want to make sure not to grab your thread there. I have a little excess thread there. All right. So again, the stab stitch, just working it through all of our layers of cinnamon at like a 45-degree angle. We're going to come up and just pull it tight. And so we're going to do that all the way around the brim. And I will meet you back at the end of this video with our bias sewn onto our brim. Alright, so we have finished our bias binding. I have put an additional bias binding around the crown of my hat to hide where we connected our crown to our brim. Our inside is finished as well, and I just finished my boater off with a simple feather trim. You know, you could always use silk flowers, make bows. You could make it as ornate or simple as you like. But that is the end of our boater class. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If any of the instructions were not clear, feel free to tag me in the comments, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you had. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed the class, and happy hat making. Thank you. Bye.